baby boy. Hey there, everybody. It's Joe Simons with Salt Strong. We just had another awesome podcast interview. You're going to love this one. It's all about targeting hogfish. Yes, hogfish with a real hook and line with Captain Dylan Hubbard of Hubbard's Marina. So check this one out. If you're ever out there offshore fishing and want to catch some big old hogs, you're going to love this episode. Hello, Salt Strong, Fish Strong Nation. Salt Strong Bros are back. Another episode. This is going to be a fun one with our boy, Mr. Dylan Hubbard of Hubbard's Marina over there in Johns Pass. We're going to talk all about bottom fishing. But first, this episode, just like all the episodes, is sponsored by the Salt Strong Insider Fishing Club, the only fishing club open 365 days a year. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, with a 100% money-back guarantee. And it's the only fishing club that actually shows spots, shows trends every single week. So check that out, saltstrong.com/podcast to learn more. You can join today risk-free. That's saltstrong.com/podcast to learn more. Lukey, let's get into it, dude.
Good intro. Good intro. I'm here, ready to rock.
Thanks.
Looking forward to chatting with Dylan.
You know, it's fun to do these in the morning. I got my coffee in me. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I feel great.
Dylan, you're there. You got to listen to us ramble for 2 minutes. What's up, brother?
I'm doing well. I was enjoying the rambling. I think someone's had a little too much coffee, though.
All right. Well, before we get into bottom fishing, which is what you guys, I know you specialize in a lot, but I think of Hubbard's Marina, I'm like, all right, I'm going to catch a lot of fish off the bottom. Talk about your history. How did you get in all this? I know you guys have a really cool store there, and the marina's been there since the late 20s. So tell us about that, man.
Yeah, my great-grandfather started our business back in 1928 with 7 rowboats and 14 cane poles.
I love it.
Back in his time, it wasn't too much bottom fishing, though. They mostly did tarpon and mackerel, and caught a few kingfish, and then they started getting into the jewfish, that kind of stuff. And my grandfather took over after World War II. When he came back from the war, he started buying the power boats. We got our first charter boat in the late 40s, early 50s. Got our first party boat around the 1956. Started doing those overnight fishing trips. Nowadays, my father and I are in the company, and we do anything from 2 inches of water out past 1,000 foot. Near shore and offshore fishing is what we specialize in. We do party boats. We have private charter boats. We can accommodate any size group, public or private, whatever you want to do out in the water. Mostly a near shore and offshore bottom fishing, but we do pelagic trolling. We have blue water billfish trips. We can even do inshore fishing, but definitely specialize in near shore and offshore bottom fishing. And Hubbard's Marina, we've got 4 different private charter boats. We've got a custom hydrofoil assisted catamaran private charter boat called the Flying Hub 2 that can take up to 18 people to 100 miles, about 40 miles an hour. We have a 60-foot Hatteras, which is more of like a yacht-style vessel where we're doing 30, 40, 50, 60-hour trips out deep drop-in and pelagic trolling in between those bottom fishing spots. We have a lot of other charter boats like the Flying Hub 1, the Hub, and then we have the 2 big party boats where we run 5, 10, 12, 39, 44, and 63-hour fishing trips on the party boats as well. So basically, anything you want to do out in the water, we got a trip to go get them.
Yeah, sounds like it is literally everything in
Legit.
a fleet of boats. That's awesome.
So it sounds like you've been fishing since you were in diapers.
Yeah, I was born on the back deck of the boat, is what I always tell people. And it's really interesting, too, because being a son of a son of a son of a sailor, a lot of information's been passed down over the generations. And a good part about party boat fishing, a lot of people kind of turn their nose up at party boats, like, that's not for me. But one of my favorite things was growing up fishing on the party boat and being a young snot-nosed kid running around the boat, listening to all these old, salty, weathered guys who have been around doing it since they were snot-nosed kids. And you pick up a lot of information. If you're sitting there and you're willing to shut your mouth and listen for a little while, especially on the way out, the way back, if you buy one of these guys a beer, they'll start talking and they'll really open up. And I learned a lot. I've learned a ton while out on the boat, just talking to some of the older, more experienced guys. So not only is it a family tradition, but we really have a blessing of fishing with a lot of experienced people from all over the world on those big party boat trips, especially like the 39, 44, and 63 hour. We have people coming in from Canada, from California, from New York, and people from all around. And everybody brings a new technique, no matter where you go in the nation, whether it's the Northern Gulf, you go to Texas, you go to the East Coast of Florida, you go to the Northeast. Everybody fishes differently.
Yep.
You could be an expert pro angler here in Tampa Bay, and if you go to the East Coast and use the same techniques, they'll laugh at you. They'll laugh you right off the boat. What are you using? What are you thinking? You know?
That's funny.
That's the fun thing about fishing. Yeah, you never know it all. There's always something new to learn, and there's often many different ways to do the same thing. So it's always fun to learn new things.
Yeah, and everything's called a different name. It's a really the aspect of fishing is it's really kind of worldwide and very regional, and everywhere you go, it's a little bit different. So the day you stop learning is the day you die.
Oh yes, I love it. Ties in well with our whole mission. That's why we're always bringing on new pros, and even like with redfish, right? Luke, had that first redfish course, and then C. Richardson comes in with different ideas on it, and they both work amazingly well. But and man, we learn every single time from these guys. So let's talk about bottom fishing and like what's working right now, like month of April. What are you guys going after? And like how many? I mean, it sounds like you have a whole fleet there. Like how many runs are you guys doing like every week?
Well, it kind of depends on the weather for the most part, as you well know.
Oh, yeah.
Offshore fishing is so dependent on the weather. And this time of year, we are the big things as far as what's running. Spring, you got your kingfish and mackerel. Not really a bottom fish, but to me, when you're out there bottom fishing, if you don't have a flat line out for those passing pelagics, you're missing fish. So kingfish and mackerel, I kind of group in with bottom fishing too, but they're definitely around near shore. Offshore, you've got the tuna, a lot of blackfin tuna around. As far as on the bottom right now, hogfish is the big name. A lot of hogfish action. March and April is kind of the peak hogfish season in the area. Anywhere from 20, 25 foot of water all the way out to past 100 foot. Those hogfish are biting well. It's always easier to get them in the shallower waters. 30 to 60, 30 to 70 foot is a real good area to start learning how to hogfish. Besides that, you got the lane snapper. Everything, all the snapper species kind of gear up for their spawn this time of year. In June and July, when the water gets hot, all the snapper species will go out into deeper waters over the artificial reefs and wrecks and spawn. So this time of year, they're kind of gearing up for that, and they get very aggressive, and they tend to congregate on these areas. And when you get into a good bite of them, you get them real chummed up. It's a lot of fun. This time of year is a great time of year to get out there, and you can get anchored up on a rock pile or a mitigation site or an artificial reef. And if you're chumming the right way, you can get those snapper up onto the surface. And those big mangrove snapper are a lot of fun. Yellowtail snapper, lane snapper, they're all biting really well right now. Obviously, the the ever-present red snapper is hard to get away from, but hopefully you can find an area where you can get your baits down to those mangroves. And mangroves this time of year are really big. They get really fat. They're kind of fattening themselves up for the spawn because in June and July, they kind of got one thing on their mind. They get a little bit smaller, a little bit skinnier, but they are definitely very aggressive when the water's hot.
Cool.
So hogfish, I guess, would be the big thing this time of year. You've got the deep water closure for the red grouper. So red grouper are a little tough to get. You have to be inside that 20-fathom fence or that 120-foot line. But as long as you're sticking and moving in between potholes and cracks on the hard, flat bottom, you're able to find some nice red grouper inside the fence. But April 1st, that deep water closure will lift, and you can bet that deep water is going to be teeming with some fat red grouper that have really only been targeted by commercial anglers, because that deep water closure only applies to recreational anglers, private and for hire. So the commercial guys have still been able to get out there and target them. And a couple commercial boats offload inside John's Pass, and they say around 130 to 150 foot is just loaded right now with some fat red grouper. So we're looking forward to April 1st closure ending, and we'll be able to go out there and smack some of those fat red grouper. But as the water warms up, it's the opposite of gag grouper. When the water cools, gag grouper come in, red grouper push out. As the water warms, red grouper push in, gag grouper push out. They kind of displace each other in that effect. And scamp grouper always kind of stay mixed in between the two. So looking forward to that deep water closure ending for sure.
Cool. So let's give some tips. So tip number one is go hire Hubbard's Marina, like go out with them to learn how to do all this stuff. But number two, if you don't do that and if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you really want to go out there and do it yourself, how about some tips for them in terms of, rigging, the tackle they need, what baits they're using for either the hogfish,
Let's start with hogfish.
Yeah.
That's been a very popular one.
Yeah.
I assume shrimp for those.
Yeah, hogfish is definitely a popular one. Every time I do a seminar or do a fishing talk, everybody's always asking about hogfish first. It's unique because hogfish 5-10 years ago, they would have been like, hogfish, you got to go shoot those. You can't catch those. And with the regulations becoming the way they're becoming, there's unintended consequence. So when you regulate red snapper and grouper and amberjack, well, why am I going to run out all that distance? I'll stay a little closer and I'll get these hogfish. And people are using lighter tackle and started catching hogs. And now it's like a big thing. Everybody wants to go out there and catch some hogfish. And they are fairly easy to catch if you know what you're doing. The biggest thing with hogfish is understanding the biology of the fish. It is not a snapper. A lot of people call them hognose snapper, and they're not a snapper. It's actually in the wrasse family. And when you're diving, when you jump in the water, and even if you spearfish for hogfish every single day, you still don't understand their natural behavior, because as soon as you get on the water and you dive down on a spot, those hogfish go straight to the bottom and kind of camouflage in and look up at you, waiting for you to swim down and shoot them in the face. But when you're fishing for them, they're different. They hang up in the water column. They're up off the bottom. They actually tend to feed just above the bottom. So when you're trying to hook and line them, you got to use super light tackle, something that looks very natural. Your presentation has to be perfect. Your terminal tackle, less is always more. And then as far as weight, you want to go light as possible. I typically use 3 approaches, either just a plain jig head tipped with your bait, or a knocker rig style setup with a super, super light egg sinker, just enough weight to get you to bottom, and about a 4/0 hook. Or the third approach would be using a jig. Naked ball jigs are one of my favorite, but Captain Chappie's hog balls are becoming very popular all of a sudden. I haven't had a chance to try them myself, but I've heard a lot about them, and a lot of people rave about them, and I've seen them work really well on the boat as well. Cool. So that's kind of a new jig that's kind of breaking onto the hogfish scene. But those are the 3 main approaches. And then as far as the rod and reel choice, typically you're using a spinning rod and reel, medium light rod. You need something with a super sensitive tip and a nice heavy backbone. My personal favorite is a Bull Bay rod, super ultra light, super sensitive, and a good backbone. That way you can really feel those bites, because these fish, they're a lot like a gag grouper in some respects, because sometimes they'll just kind of come up and mouth the bait, and then other times they're going to slam your bait, just totally freight train you. And they will rock you up. They will wrap you around a sea fan, or they'll get up under a ledge and break you off. So you need super light tackle, but you also need something that's going to be able to put up a fight. So typically around a 4,000 to 5,000 series spinning reel. Again, trying to stay light and heavy. The Quantum reels, the Cado is a nice reel. I use a Shimano CI14. The Florida Fishing products, they make a good product. There's a bunch of different reels out there that you can use, but you want to keep something with a good drag power, something that's light, that's going to match with that rod you have. So it's nice and light, super sensitive, but strong.
Cool.
Typically around 28 to 35 pounds of drag is all you need. And as far as line, typically 20 to 30 pound braid. Most of your reel is going to be braid because you want that, again, that sensitivity is key. And then you have to use a long fluorocarbon top shot on top of your braid. Typically 20 to 30 feet of fluorocarbon gets a line-to-line knot. I always point people to the Salt Strong video, that how to tie the FG knot you guys did.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, on my seminars, I mention it all the time because people are always asking how to tie that, and I'm not going to stand in front of a seminar and try to tie that.
Yeah, it's hard. That one's hard to display, but once you get it, it's easy. It's just hard to kind of listen, or as you basically have to see like in close detail, and the video is the only way to do that.
Yeah. I want to see you guys do a video on how to tie the bobbin knot, because people ask me about that in the seminar. And
that's the PR knot. It's the
PR bobbin.
Yeah, I've done it before. It's the only one that's tested stronger than the FG, but it's a pain to tie. It is a bear to tie. So that's why I haven't done a video on that one yet. I don't know.
You have to basically be a surgeon to do that one, right, Luke?
Yeah, you literally have a bobbin. You have to like spin it around like 30 times. It's you have to have a tool, which I don't like, and it takes a while. But it's amazingly strong. I think it's got to be the strongest knot out there.
Well, I like using that knot personally when I'm at home, when I'm tying my rods and reels up for the next day, or for a big trip that's coming up, or when I'm trolling, something where I know I want that to last a while. But it's definitely one of the knots you got to tie behind closed doors.
Yeah, you can't do that on a rocking boat. That would be very difficult.
Yeah, you got to be good to do that, and I'm not quite there yet myself. But the FG knot works great. Long story short, got to get that braid to that fluorocarbon. You want something flat that's going to get it through those guides. Then once you get that set up, you use your rig, whether that's the knocker rig, the jig head, or the jig we were talking about before. And then as far as bait for hogfish, typically live shrimp, fiddler crabs, sand fleas, something to that effect. Lately, we've been using the fiddler crabs with some pretty high success. Fiddler crabs are cool because you don't have the bycatch. If you want to go out there and have a lot of action and catch a lot of fish, shrimp is going to be your best friend. But the fiddler crabs enable you to really just target hogfish. It's kind of hogfish or bust with those things, so that makes it a little bit more interesting. But your shrimp is going to get you a lot of the other fish too. Cool. Now, with hogfish, it's very, very unique because they're super smart. They're super leader shy. They're going to be one of the last fish to bite. So even if you know you've got one of the best hogfish spots in the area, when you go out there and anchor up and you put your bait down, you're not going to catch hogfish right away. You won't catch hogfish for 20, 30, 40, 60 minutes sometimes. What you got to do first is you got to get those other fish fed, those grunts, also known as gray snapper, porgies, black sea bass, the lane snapper, the more aggressive fish. You got to get them out of the way. Now, whether that means you're chumming head, when you're on a party boat like ours, we have the ability to anchor up, tell everybody to drop down squid. We catch a bunch of the more aggressive fish, get them out of the way, and then we switch to fishing for hogfish with the live shrimp or the fiddler crabs or lighter tackle. If you're fishing with your buddies and there's 4 of you and you don't want to spend an hour and a half catching grunts, you can kind of cheat by using other techniques like heavy chumming. Aquatic Nutrition makes a really cool product called Super Shrimps. It's Super Shrimps. I'm not saying that wrong. That's what they call it. But it's like a heavy pellet type food, and it sinks very fast. So a lot of people make the mistake when you're bottom fishing of putting out chum, and the chum is like a powder or an oatmeal, and it's floating back. Yeah, that's great if you're fishing in the Keys in 20 foot of water, but when you're out there in 30, 40, 50, 60 foot of water, if you're not using a chum that sinks ultra fast, you're not chumming your spot. You're chumming 150 yards away from your spot, and you're actually pulling fish away from the bottom of the boat. So when we're out there bottom fishing, we use a chum bomb or a chum sickle to get that chum down directly below the boat. One of my favorite techniques is making the chum sickle. Your wife might not like it very much, but you can get away with it if you do it quick the night before. Just use like a solo cup and mix together some of that oatmeal style or sand style chum with a little bit of cut up threadfin or cut up shrimp. I like using a little bit of threadfin, a little bit of shrimp, and a little bit of that aquatic nutrition snapper up. Mix that all together in a solo cup, and then drop 6-ounce weight with a little loop of monofilament. So just tie a little loop of monofilament through a 6-ounce lead, drop that into the bottom of the solo cup, stick it in the freezer, freeze it up, and then the next morning you've got a little loop of monofilament sticking out at the top of the chum in the solo cup. You could stick that in the live well when you're ready to use it, and the outer edge of that chum will thaw out, and you can kind of pull on that line at the top of the chum, pull that whole chum sickle out, and tie it onto a line and drop it to the bottom and shake your rod up and down, and that lead will break out of that chum, and all that frozen chum will just be sitting right below your boat, right on the spot.
That's awesome. That's a good idea.
Yeah, chum sickle.
Yeah.
So you put all the shrimp and everything in like the family blender too, right? You gotta make sure it's all nice and chopped up. Sure, the wife will love that.
Yes, and then you leave it in the sink. Don't wash it out. That's the trick.
Yeah, honey, you might want to go easy on the smoothie tomorrow morning.
Yeah, surefire way to sleep on the couch for sure. Don't clean up after your chum sickles. The other method is the chum bomb. You can kind of cheat, and a lot of people use this a lot more back in the day. Not many people use it now because it's a little bit of littering involved here. But you take a brown paper bag, fill it full of your favorite chum mix and some cut up dead bait, and put a swivel or put 3 or 4 egg sinkers on your monofilament line, and just put a swivel on the bottom of it. So you've got a little chain of weights, and you slide that chain of weights into the brown paper bag with your chum, and stick a rubber band on the top of the bag to kind of close that bag around your main line. You can drop that down to the bottom fairly quickly, but not too quick to tear the bag. And once you get to the bottom, same process, just kind of shake your rod up and down, and that brown paper bag will open up and allow your chum to kind of make a big old cloud on the bottom. And then you can reel it up, and you get most of the paper bag back. You get your rubber bands back. You're not leaving anything on the bottom except for a little bit of brown paper bag. And as you well know, when you're beyond 9 miles, you're actually able to dump cardboard like that. So it dissipates pretty quickly in the water, but I stick to the chum sickle. There's no littering involved there. But,
it's got a cooler name too.
Yeah. And you look a lot cooler doing it. They're like, "What are you doing with that yellow red solo cup full of chum there?"
So let's.
It depends on what you want to do. So once you get the chum to the bottom, you get that hogfish fed with those other more aggressive species fed, then you can start catching those hogs. Because when you get on a spot, everybody knows when you get on your favorite spot, everybody starts catching fish. You're catching fish like crazy. Everybody's getting bites, and then you get to that point where the bite kind of slows down. And then a few minutes later, you get to the point where, all right, no one's catching fish. That is the time where you want to break out the hogfish gear and start targeting hogfish once everything else stops biting. And then you're going to catch that first hogfish. And once you catch that first hogfish, it's like someone hit the light switch. Then you're going to catch a handful more, or maybe a dozen, or maybe even 2 dozen more. But just as quick as they started, someone will walk up and turn off that light switch, and then it's over. They stop biting, and you got to move and start that process over again. So they definitely take a lot of work, and it can be frustrating. Easiest way to do it is bring a bunch of friends to target the more aggressive fish and get them out of your way. and then everybody switched to shrimp or fiddler crabs at the same time, and get that smell going in the water and target them hogs.
Cool.
Yeah, that's when I went one time, and it was exactly as you described, where we went through. We were using shrimp on tipped on jigs, and we caught a ton of all the aggressive fish. Then it slowed down, and then it was like a half dozen. Then we caught 7 or 8 hogfish, and then totally shut down. Yeah, it was pretty much exactly as you described. That was crazy.
Yeah, so it's very strange how it works. It's like a slow crescendo of the more aggressive fish, and then they kind of taper off and stop, and then really quick, lightning fast hogfish biting. What's really frustrating is if you hook a big one, you break off. By the time you've rigged up another rod and you're back down to the bottom, they've already turned off. So it's really frustrating. It's quick and fast, and you got to be ready for sure.
And they're surprisingly strong.
Very surprisingly strong. Yeah, for the size fish. I kind of equated. I was fishing with someone from the Northwest, and they equated it to a halibut, and how the halibut is such a large, flat fish that just kind of turn in the water and fight sideways, and that's what a hogfish does when you hook him up. He turns his side right up towards the boat, and he's actually using the width of his body to kind of drag against the water, and all he's doing is trying to swim down to the bottom, but he's putting his flat side up, almost like a flounder. So It makes it a little bit harder to drag them up off the bottom.
Yeah, it's kind of the move they do when spearfishing too. They'll just sit there and put their broadside to you to make for an easy spearfishing target. It's a fun way to get them as well.
Yeah, spearfishing is a lot of fun, and yeah, fish do that because they sense with that lateral line down the side of their body, and a hogfish, their lateral line isn't as significant. But if you look at a porgy or a scamp grouper, you can really see that lateral line, and that's actually kind of how they see movement under the water. So when you swim down onto a spot and they kind of present their side to you, that's what they're doing. They're trying to check you out. And you got a split second to shoot them in the face before they kind of turn and give you that full body shot again.
Cool. Well, two important things. One, we have a promise to our viewers: we don't use any big words. And you said crescendo, I believe, earlier. So we'll put a link to the dictionary on what that means in the show notes. But number two, in all seriousness, is like the final piece of it: spots. So talk about ideal depth. Obviously you're not going to give away your spots, but what are people looking for? Are they going out and just finding reefs? Like, give some tips on that do-it-yourself or on kind of best hogfish spots.
Well, the great part about hogfish is they are unlike gag grouper in the fact that they tend to hang off the side of the spots. Like if you got a good ledge and you put your bait right on the ledge, you're not going to catch hogfish as quickly as you would as if you're hanging off the side of the ledge a little bit. So they're very forgiving in that aspect. So it makes it a little bit easier to target them because you don't have to be 100% right on the spot. But typically my favorite area to target hogfish are small ledges because, again, they're highly sought after species. People die for them. People fish for them. There's a lot of pressure. So if you go to that 4, 5, 6 foot ledge you have in your book, a lot of times that's pretty well targeted. It's hard to miss a 6 foot ledge on your bottom machine nowadays with the technology that's out there. So I like fishing the smaller spots, something that I know an inexperienced angler or an angler who's going 50 miles an hour drinking a beer is not going to see. So those 1, 2, 3 foot ledges are where I start for the hogfish. The small rock piles is a good area. I tend to avoid the really large structure like reef or wrecks, big mitigation sites, large ledges. They're there. You can catch hogfish at those spots. But it's easier to kind of dial into them at those smaller spots. A, because those smaller spots get less pressure, and then B, those smaller spots are going to have lower numbers of those more aggressive fish. Like if you go out to one of those big mitigation sites that's 100 yards long and 20 yards tall with all this rock pile and rubble, you're going to have thousands of grunts and porgies and sea bass and yellowtail to get through before you get to those hogs. So smaller is always better when targeting those hogfish. They like hard bottom. They like hanging around the structure. They eat crustaceans, so they're eating the shrimp, the crabs that are hanging out on the hard structure. They like to be around the sea fans, the higher relief, off to the side of that super rocky ledge. So they will kind of hang near a ledge, but they venture out into the sand and shell around it. So you want to find the hard bottom, but you don't necessarily have to fish right on that hard bottom. Being off to the side of it's fine too. As far as spots go, that's the best information I could give. I would say is don't think too big, and remember these hogfish are kind of cruising that whole area. They're a scavenger. They're not like a gag. They're not going to sit in a hole and stay in that hole. They're going to be moving over the entire area. That's why everybody using the same bait works so well. When you get everybody on the boat using shrimp, it gets the smell going in the water. Those hogfish are going to come to those baits. Whereas if you got 4 guys on the boat using squid and 2 guys using shrimp, your chances of really dialing in the hogfish are going to be a little bit lower.
Cool. And what was the ideal depth again?
Ideal would be anywhere from 30 to about 70 foot of water. Yeah. But lately we've been catching as deep as 110. I mean, just not too long ago, someone caught a big one at the Skyway. So you never know the depth. But the ideal depths where we see them the most often, where they're the easiest to target, is at 30 to 70 foot.
Cool. Well, man, we
caught them in the middle ground before.
For those of you guys that can get out there, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, they will bite a little bit of everything. Lately, we've been seeing some big 12, 14, 15-pound hogfish on small live pinfish out there in the deep water. But it's almost impossible to target them out in that depth of water. It's more of just like, I was fishing for mangroves and I caught this huge hogfish.
That's a giant hogfish. Those are some tasty fillets. 18 pounds? Golly.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a kid, and it was an 18-pound hogfish caught on the overnight boat. He was fishing for mangrove snapper with a small pinfish and caught a big old hog. And that's about as big as they get.
Yeah, that's a giant.
Yeah, for sure.
Crazy. So we just had a whole podcast on hogfish. That was awesome.
Yeah, I think that's what we have to title the podcast.
Yeah, now we have to have you back
awesome.
For different species.
Well, I get off on a rabbit trail sometimes and just keep going, you know.
No, that was.
Yeah, they're just a cool fish. Yeah, they taste great. They're just cool looking and they fight good. So it's it's definitely and I didn't realize about the hook and line option until maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. So I thought they were 100% spearfishing, and then I had that one chance to go hook and line. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, they are a lot of fun on the hook and line. But because you're using such light tackle, it is really challenging just to feel the bite. You're using super lightweight. It's hard to feel that bite, and it's a big change up, especially if you grew up on a back deck of a party boat like me, fishing 100 foot of water with 60-pound test and a 6-ounce lead, bringing a spinning rod on the boat. Just getting a spinning rod on the boat is weird to begin with. And nowadays, it's like a big thing, super light tackle. And it's definitely changing the culture offshore.
Yeah, I was actually using 10-pound braid when I did it. It was 10-pound braid and 25-pound leader, and had a couple serious battles with those things.
Yeah,
but it worked.
I mean, a lot of people use 20-pound fluorocarbon and 10, 15-pound braid, but I always like going bigger. But definitely no more than like 25, 30-pound. 30-pound is where I like to start. But if you're catching a bunch of hogs, or you've got the hogs dialed in and they're biting well, you caught 24 of them yesterday in this area, I'm going back to that area, I'll rig up a 40-pound just so you have a little bit more power. And if you know they're biting, they're biting. This time of year, they're more aggressive this time of year than any other time of year. So you can go a little bit heavier. But yeah, the lighter is always going to get you more bites. It's the same thing on the grass flats. I mean, you guys know it well. If you're using 30-pound fluorocarbon, you're going to have a better chance of landing that fish, but you're going to get more bites on the 10 or the 15-pound.
Yep. Yeah, hooking a 10-pound plus hogfish, you're going to want that stronger line. That is for sure.
Yeah, they're no joke. I always tell one of the first things we go over when we're hog fishing is how to palm the reel. Because that first 10, 15, 20 feet of the fight can get a little bit hairy, and you're using that light tackle near rock bottom. You can get broke off pretty quick too.
Yeah, you know immediately that it's not a grunt or porgy or snapper when those hogs hit too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, once you got them hooked, because they bite very similar, and sometimes it's a very light bite. They'll sit right on top of your bait, and they'll kind of wait for it to move a little bit before they hit it. And but as soon as you get them hooked and they realize they're hooked, yeah, that rod doubles over, and you're like, oh, it's on. My mouth starts watering as it happens.
Yeah, we gotta get out there with you soon, man. Well, I'm looking at the time here. We literally had an entire podcast on hogfish. This is freaking awesome. So tell us where hubbardsmarina.com, where's the best place to follow you guys and social media, etc.
Yeah, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Just simply search Hubbard's Marina. You can look us up on hubbardsmarina.com. Remember, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too busy. We do daily updates on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages talking about what's going on and a little bit about the fishing report. It's not so in-depth, and we don't give you all the tips and tricks we will in the Salt Strong Insider Fishing Club, but we'll give you a good idea. Shameless plug.
I love it, man. Well, thank you, brother. Yeah, we're going to get out with you here, I guess, next month. So we'll have a follow-up to this podcast on the water with some video footage. So looking forward to that. And man, Dylan, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for so much that you guys just do in general. I know we could go on and on about what you guys are doing just to help out the conservation and getting the rules better for everyone, including us recreational guys. So, man, thanks for everything that you guys do out there.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I look forward to fishing with you guys soon.
Yes, sir.
Gonna be fun.
Well, that's it for this episode. Make sure to go to saltstrong.com/podcast to see all the podcast episodes and to join the Insider Fishing Club. Over and out. Thanks, guys. Peace.
See ya.
See ya.